Alright, well, since I'm in a vlog spirit, or vlog mode, I think I'm gonna do a chapter of my book. I think I'm gonna go from, I think I've done this part and I'm overlapping, but I'm gonna go from my dad dying in 1985, May, Memorial Day, right around Memorial Day. And I was 22. I had been living on my own for like 6 months. No, a year. And then I moved back for 6 months before my father died. And then once he died, I made a fence in the front yard. I made a 5-foot fence all along the front yard so she could have dogs in the front. And I had big scary dogs, pit bulls. And she felt a lot safer with the dogs, all around the house. And I came to Yosemite. I got to Yosemite, I think it was August 2nd, 85. My sister's birthday. Yeah, I believe that's right. And I left August 1st, drove my pickup truck with my motorcycle in the back to Yosemite, and I spent the night in Goat Meadows on Highway 41, August 1st, the night, and in the morning, my interview wasn't until later in the day, so I had time to kill. So that morning I unloaded my motorcycle and went riding around Goat Meadow, and it was just like, wow, man, this is paradise. I'm in heaven here. So loaded up my motorcycle. I used to be able to load and unload my motorcycle myself into my pickup, easy. And went down to the valley, took a shower, got dressed nice, wore a nice shirt with a tie, and went to the personnel office, and they hired me. I was an unassigned hire going up there. So I get there and they're like, all we have is food service and housekeeping. And I'm like, oh, I've done food before, I'll do that. I'm like, you don't got anything better, And the guy walks by and he goes, try him for security. And I'm like, yeah, try me for security. That sounds good. And so I went over there, and I'm a firefighter and EMT, big, strong, strapping, young Latino boy, and full of vim and vigor, and smart and well-spoken. They snapped me up. Yeah, EMT, firefighter, yes, please, and thank you, and gave me a cool place to live, and a car, and yeah, it was cool. That was a fun job. I was a security officer, firefighter, and EMT. I had all different kinds of jobs in that. I worked days, I worked nights. I worked on the fire department. I worked the cash run. I worked in Winona. I worked at Badger Pass. I did it all. I did shoplift detail. I arrested people for shoplifting many times. What else? I've worked in emergencies. We had these mono winds. I had my own fire truck. I rode in the Seagraves 1932 fire truck when we first got there, and then they replaced it with the one from Emergency, the TV show, which was a big deal back then because TV was a big deal. Anyway, so I rode in that too, and then I had my own fire truck, a little truck, and it had like a little pumper on it and tools and all kinds of stuff, and I would respond in that and drive around in that during an emergency, like mono winds, but or any fires. And I did burn downs where we burned down buildings and practiced putting them out for the fire department for uh, for firefighting for Park Service. My company sent me and paid me to do all these things, and it was a fun job. You know, I was out and about, walking around all the time, and then whenever there was an emergency, I was the guy. You know, who I put in my turnouts and go respond. You know, as a company agent, and it was a fun job. I got there in August of '85, and it was crazy. Right when I got there, 3 guys died on Half Dome, and then okay, so so they said go over and talk to security. So I went over there and just like I told them all the shit I did and spoke to them and I'm smart and they're like snap me up and so they said go to uniforms and get the. I got a cool uniform. They gave me a radio and a belt and a badge and they gave me. They said go home and we're gonna tell you what time or go to your dorm and we're gonna tell you what time we want you in, and then probably tomorrow. And then on my way home, they called me on the radio. On the way to my dorm, they called me. I was in a company car now. On the way home, they called me on my radio and said, "Come in at 1700 hours, 5 p.m." And I'm like, "Okay." So I mean, like the first day I got there, I was working on the job, wearing a cool uniform, and I remember the guy that was in front of me and the guy that was behind me in the personnel line were both maids. I pull up in this car wearing a tie and a nice shirt and slacks, with a flashlight and a walkie-talkie, and they look at me and they're like, "Damn, how did you do that?" And I'm like, "I got juice." So I got there in August, and right away it started being like less and less employees, and all the straight girls left, and all that was left was guys and lesbians over the winter. And I was like, wow, I didn't have any. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a vast pool of women to associate with and spend time with, and so come April, I'm working in security, and this cute girl comes up to me and says, "Are you the one that's supposed to help me?" And I'm like, "No, but I will." So that turns out so what happens is I take her to housing and show her the overnight housing because she has to report to work in the morning, and so I know where she lives. And after, when I get off of work, I went over there and started talking to her because on the way to taking her to housing, like, she's from Almani, but she's a Yosemite Indian. Almani was the next town over from where I lived in Baldwin Park in Southern California before I came to Yosemite. So she's like, we're neighbors, in Southern California, and now she's returning to her homeland, and I've been here for 8 months. So I'm like, oh, this is a natural. I'll show her around her own home, and yeah, I mean, I pursued her heavily because she's a Yosemite Indian. She's a nice-looking woman, single. I'm like, haven't been with a woman in a long time, and I'm like, whoa, I really need it. And anyway, so right away I was like, she took me to the ceremonies, and I'm like, these people need my genes. A lot of people have thought how hubris of me to think that, but it's bore out to be true. My daughter is going to be superintendent at Yosemite. Anyway, so Sandra and I get together right as soon as she gets there in April. Like, I was the first person she met, and we get together, and before didn't take very long before we were roommates, uh, and and then we conceived my daughter in Takoya C4 in Yosemite Village, like the explosive. And so then we had Irene, and then they kicked us out of Yosemite. Man, it was like, it was devastating. You know, it's like they could have gave us housing, they could have given us married housing, but they didn't. You know, we had to go find housing outside of the park, which was worth it because we both had good jobs, and. But you know, I think looking back, it was like how symbolic kicking a Yosemite Indian out as soon as she's born, when we had the jobs that would have qualified for housing, but they didn't give it to us. You know, family housing. We had 2 good jobs. That was the beginning of the end. Chandler left before I did, and she went to go work in the daycare, in the Yosemite daycare, and. I worked in security, but it's just like before that they started putting us on the same shift so that we had to find a babysitter. You know, that sucked. That it wasn't necessary. They could have given us shifts where we could have relayed. You know, but so Irene is born in April 10th, 1987, and she's born in Fresno because like Sandra worked the day before she had Irene. She worked until the last day, and I think like while she was work or after work, we went down to the hospital, and she had the baby overnight. And she had Irene overnight. I saw Irene first. I saw Irene's head before Sandra did. And Paul's. So Sandra went to, she had the baby in Fresno. We brought Irene back to Yosemite to show everyone, like, oh, look at our new daughter. We got stopped on the way in by Grady, I'm going to say Wayne Grady or Officer Grady. He was a park ranger, and I was speeding. And I showed him Irene and said, oh, I'm just excited because look, she's a Yosemite Indian. And he didn't give me a ticket. He liked me, and I worked with them, and it was Irene, you know, my good luck charm. And so then Sandra, we didn't have housing. They kicked us out. They kicked Irene and Sandra out because you can't have kids in housing. They could have given us married housing, but they didn't. Anyway, so Sandra went to go stay with her mom. And my job was to secure a place to live for us, and so right away I found a place on the one that we moved to on Carter Road, just down the hill from here. I'll tell that story. So when Irene was born, we needed a different home because we were getting kicked out of the dorms in Yosemite, and they wouldn't give us married housing. So Sandra went to LA with her mom and Irene, and it was my job to secure a place for us to live. So I came to Mariposa on my motorcycle and stopped at the Happy Burger in the middle of town. It's not there anymore. And there was a newspaper on the bench outside, and I opened it up and went to classifieds, went to rent houses for rent, and there was one for 2 bedroom, $250 a month. I went right over, And I called him up, went over, and told him I'm a security fire and safety officer in Yosemite. My wife's a Yosemite Indian, and we just had a baby, and they kicked us out of housing, and we need a place to live, so we can we can still work. You know, we can still live here and work here. And so I just talked to the guy, and then he said, "Well, I'll let you know." And then, like, right away, he was like, "Well, 10 people asked us for it, but we're going to give it to you." So, so I moved, I moved in, and you know, started like putting stuff for Sandra and the kids, or Sandra and Irene, and Sandra wouldn't tell me exactly when she was coming. And one time when I was getting off of work, I was coming home to my new house, my new little house, right here on the corner of Triangle and Carter. I saw a car broke down, and it was 5 Italian travelers, 3 of them girls, and I brought them home, and you know, let them sleep on the floor or whatever, safe place, you know, off of the dirt out, you know, inside. And Sandra gets there. We got there at like 2 in the morning. Sandra gets there like 6 in the morning, and I'm sleeping, and she starts yelling, "Who in the hell are all these people in my house?" Sandra had never been there, and there's a house of Italians sleeping on the floor. She got all mad at me. That's just who I was, though. You know, it's like I would just help someone out if I could. You know, you're gonna be outside in the elements here. Come and sleep on my floor. Anyway, so that was Sandra arriving to our new house in Mariposa. I was terrible. I was. Okay, so then so then I worked for the concessionaire as a security fire and safety officer till like 1988, when I just couldn't take it anymore. So then I quit, like, I don't know, like February. So I think the last time I cut my hair was like in 87. So I have never cut my hair since then, 1987 to 2018, or shaved my beard, or my mustache. I've trimmed, yeah, but I don't know why. No reason really. I mean, I don't have any like, God says to do it that way. I guess it's because I don't have a reason not to. You know, it's like I just wild. I'm just, you know, I don't have to cut it. I don't have to. I have to wash it, and I don't comb it, but I pull out the tangles pretty regularly. Other than that, it's like, you know, I gotta take out the dead hair and the fruit and all that and wash it, but it's really easy. It's much less painful than shaving. I think that's the bottom line. Is it's easier and less painful than shaving. is why I don't cut it, you know. I mean, I don't have a reason to cut it. My hair or my beard, there's no reason to. If there was a reason, I probably would do it, you know, if there was a compelling reason. But I haven't found one. If someone's like, "Oh, I'll give you $100,000 to shave off your beard and your hair, shave your hair and your beard," I would do it. Yeah, I'd probably do it for less. No, I think it would take like $100,000. Because then I could do a bunch of cool stuff around here. I could fix my place. I could remodel. Definitely needs remodeling. Okay, so if I had $100,000 come to me and I knew I was gonna like keep getting an income for the rest of my life, it's like I'm not there. Okay, I would build a deck all around here. I think I would build a deck above the house and fix the room back there, and I would connect the living room to the back deck. So, Okay, so I bought this. I bought the land in '87. Okay, I bought the land in '87, and we lived on the corner, and I I didn't do much to this place. We just worked on paying it, and then in July, I think it was July 3rd, 1990, we separated. July 3rd or July 4th? I guess July 3rd. That was crazy. The anniversary of when I went viral. Huh. July 3rd, 1990. 20 years later to the day, I went viral. I never thought of that. Wow. I remember the day Sandra left, and I think I walked up to the property, and a big limb had fallen off this really old tree. And it wasn't old, it was like young and healthy, but a big limb fell, and I was like, wow, was it really July 5th? Maybe it's July, I know it's July 4th of July weekend. It was 4th of July the day before, or the 7th. I can't remember which. But anyway, right around that time, we separated for the first time. Well, we separated, never got back together. Where's it going with that? So, let me think. So when Irene was born, not long after Sandra got back into the daycare, and Irene was there, so she was one of the kids that Sandra watched, which, right when Sandra stopped working for security. Oh, that's one of the things I forgot to say. I got Sandra a job in security. She started off in the hamburger stand, and then went to housekeeping, and then they asked me if I knew anyone that'd be good, and I said, yeah, I know, and I told Sandra, and she's like, oh no, and I'm like, don't say oh no, it's a better job than this. At that time, she was cleaning the housing bathrooms. She was a sand jag, and so I got her in security, and she worked in security until Irene was born, and then she went to the daycare after that, and then she went to school for early childhood education. And what else? What else did she do? Okay, so I worked. So I started working for the Park Service in 1988. The first job I had to do was campground maintenance. I think for Larry. No, what was it? I can't remember. Chuck. I can't remember. Charles something was my foreman, who I think had been already, or later was convicted of some kind of child sex charges. Anyway, so okay, so my first job was campground maintenance, and then the following year I came back and they hired me on the road department, and I was a a traffic flagger, and I was working on the road department one time on Northside Drive. I think over there, like by Al Cap or somewhere on that side, down that way. And this guy comes by, Dennis Wahid, in a in a sign shop truck, and says, who knows how to use a drill? And I was like, I know how to use a drill. He's like, come on. So we went and we installed some signs, and he saw I was badass. He was like, man, you could do this stuff good, easy, you know. I was like, yeah, I just grabbed the sign, bolted all in, yeah, you know, what's hard about that? And he was like impressed by that, so he hired me. Or he started working me on the sign shop instead of the road department. So right away I got a promotion the first season of the road department to the sign shop, and then he hired me again the following year. And then that was 88, and then 89 I was in the sign shop, and then 90 I came back in the road department, sign shop, and then the fire broke out, the A-Rock and the Steamboat fire, and they had me flagging traffic during the fire up on 41 by Chinquapin, and I heard over the radio, I need a swamper over here, to headquarters, and headquarters over there, we'll look. And as soon as he got off the radio, I said, I know how to swamp, you know, and he's like, come here. So I was like, yeah, I work for Allen County Fire Department, you know, I was on a fire crew, we did wildland firefighting, and I was a sawyer and I knew how to swamp, you know, and he was like, come on. And so he called in, it's like, I got someone. And from then I was on the Sawyer crew. It was badass, man. We were chopping down giant trees, man, because they had caught fire and died. We cut down several multi-century-old trees that were well over 100 to 150, going up to 200. Oh, and over 200 with some of these red firs up by Badger Pass. We cut down some that were just massive, over 200 feet tall, and sent them flying over down an embankment. It was surreal. The sawyer Larry Castro, who's a Yosemite Indian. Oh, so the guy who hired me was Charlie Castro. He was a Yosemite Indian, and his two sons worked in Yosemite for the forestry crew. So I worked with them. I was Larry's swamper, and Larry ended up being foreman of the forestry crew in Yosemite after Jay Johnson retired, who I worked for. I worked for Jay Johnson. I worked for Les James in the sign shop. I worked for Ralph Parker in the road crew. Who else? Anyway, so I worked the A-Rock and the Steamboat fire. It was crazy. I was in the Sawyer crew. They put us in the lodge. They gave us room. They emptied the park, and it was just firefighters. They put us in the lodge. They gave us meals. They did our laundry. They paid us really good. And we went out and cut trees down that died that could hit the road. And we did it for weeks and weeks, like 6 weeks. And then they hired me on the forestry crew the following winter. And then after that, I think I worked for the sign shop in Mariposa. And then I went back to Yosemite, and I worked for Backcountry Utilities. And maybe the sign shop again. I can't remember. And then that takes me up to when I drove truck, because I was only working seasonal for the Park Service, and Sandra and I were split up, and I had to pay child support and the mortgage, and I couldn't do it just working seasonal, so I got into truck driving, and that takes me to 1994 when I'm 32. That's what I can remember from now. I'm sure stories will surface, in the future about from that timeline. But okay, so now I am up to where I was a truck driver, and there's a good chapter on that coming. I love her more. I love her more. I don't like you at all. You go. Get it. Right. Come here. Come here. Ouch. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Teeth and claws. Oh, dogs are tough, man. Crazy. Get down. Get down. get. Come here. Ouch. Ow! You better knock it off. I'm gonna kick your ass. You get him, girl. You get him. ginger girl. Ooh, that feels good. Scratch my back some more, you brat. Ouch. Come on, get down. Get down. Get. Got it. God. God, why do you love me so much, you bad dog? You're like another ginger, huh? You love me so much. Huh? You love me, bad dog. Cowgirl. Ouch. Ouch. Ouch.